All right, so we are talking high density grazing with small amounts of animals. Here, 8,000 pounds of animals, trying to achieve 100,000 pounds of animal per acre. Gets us on about 3,500 square foot paddocks, which during the dormant grass season right now, being almost, what are we, the end of December, we still got some green grass, but not a ton. So, supplementing with hay.
We have a sheep named Precious.
Mm-hmm.
I just put her shoe right there.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't know who I am, I'm Mayla. Who you send us to?
So, supplementing with hay to make sure they're getting enough feed on such a small paddock. And how do we know if they're getting enough feed? Well, a couple things. Mainly, we're looking at their condition over time, making sure they're not losing condition. Mela, try not to throw hay at the cows, please. We stay nice and calm when we're with the cows. If we stay calm, they stay calm, right? So there's this little spot in front of their hip bone, and it's only on the left side of the animal where you can observe it to see if their stomach is full. If it starts to get retracted, they call it the triangle of death. If it starts to get retracted, it means they're not getting enough feed. So if you look on that animal right there, a very, very slight indentation. Now I just moved them from one paddock to the other, so I feel pretty good about the amount of feed they had on the last one. So just starting to get a little indentation there, and now they're back on full feed. A new paddock, fresh grass, and a bunch of hay. So that's the spot you're looking for. If that gets really indented and it stays that way from move to move, you're not giving them enough food. So we got to make sure they're still gaining weight, or at least maintaining, but preferably gaining weight over the winter months as well. So we're using them to kind of doing when you high density graze, you're doing it a lot of times for the soil and the grass.
Pet Becky.
Oh, thanks, sweetie. And by improving the soil and the grass, the cows will improve later in time, but sometimes it can put stress on them or pressure them for the period of time that you're doing it, because you're kind of forcing them to eat everything in the paddock, maybe some stuff they wouldn't have normally ate. You know, there's broom sedge in here, there's different weeds, there's things they would have passed over, but they're in here really tight. So they're kind of forced to eat everything. So you're pressuring the cows a little bit. They're not in like heaven right now, just eating all their favorite ice cream. You're forcing them to eat their veggies. Oh, Mela, the water's done. Do you think you can disconnect it?
Yeah.
So why not just give them everything they want and let them just indulge in all the best stuff? Well, that'll be good for a little while. They'll probably put on some weight for a little while until they eat all the best stuff, and then you're left with a bunch of weeds and bad stuff that they don't like.
Hey, guess what?
No, thank you, Mela.
Guess what?
What?
Daddy's gonna let me pet Becky.
Maybe. So that's a short-term win, all right, if you want them to go eat all the best stuff on the farm, but it's not really sustainable over the long term, because once they eat all the good stuff, and they keep eating it when it tries to grow back, although it's dormant now, but say in the summer or spring, they keep eating the good stuff, it goes away, they kill it, bad stuff keeps coming back because they have access to everything. It can go south quickly. You end up with poor soil, poor forage, and then in the long term, the cow's performance suffers. So right now, we're sacrificing massive weight gains by forcing them to eat stuff they may not have necessarily eaten before. But the long-term goal of high-density grazing is improving the soil, which in long term improves the cow's health, the herd as a whole. So how does it do that? Well, again, we're evenly eating the good and the bad. So giving the good a fighting chance to come back strong by knocking down the weeds and that stuff too. We're mimicking the ancient herd movements of lots of animals crowded together, peeing, pooping. That's putting down a lot of nitrogen into the soil, and then using their hooves by being packed together fairly tightly to trample everything into the ground. They're pushing their pee, their poop, the leftover forage that's not eaten, all this dry matter, which is carbon. So they're basically pushing carbon and nitrogen down into the soil. You combine those two in a good compost pile, you end up with very fertile soil or compost.
This is our
You just
entire farm.
really
It's
want to
like-
get in this, don't you?
Yeah, I think our entire field is like 100 acres.
No, it's not, but I'm glad you think that.
How many acres?
I'll tell you later.
How many acres? 5?
14.
Oh, 14 acres.
So we're letting the animals work for us to improve our soil instead of having to purchase all sorts of fertilizers and crazy synthetic things, which again are good in the short term. They might make the grass and everything spring to growth in the spring, but over the long term they really kill your soil fertility. You got to keep putting more and more and more and more every year until you kill all the microbes in the soil, and then your soil's spent, which is what's happening to a lot of conventional farmers. So we're using our animals to fertilize, and we're controlling their movements with electric fence and making sure they poop and pee all over the ground. So then we look and see if that's working, and we have poop everywhere. Lots of poop. With only 8 animals on 14 acres, you would never get poop like this spread out all over the farm. Well, you can see it a lot better this way, huh? But when you pack them in to a high density, then you end up getting poop spread like this. And this is just as good, if not better, than getting some truck out here and dumping manure or fertilizer or something all over the place. And that's the main reason of high density grazing. Getting this even spread of poop all over the place from just a few animals, right? That looks like 1,000 animals just came through here and pooped all over the place. But it was the equivalent of 8. And in a nutshell, that's kind of how high density grazing works. This will all contribute to better soil in the spring and summer. There's a Cooper hawk. You probably can't see it. And there's my wonderfully smart daughter testing to see if the electric fence is on or not.